Preview. Focus on the main idea. One of the first civilizations developed in the Fertile Crescent. Places: Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, Uruk, Kish, Lagash, Nippur, Umma, Vocabulary: civilization, fertile, plain, plateau, irrigation, city-state, region, artisan. The Fertile Crescent. You are there. 3500 BC. You try not to complain, but for days now, you've been trailing along behind your family's herd of goats. You've breathed in more than your share of the dust they kick up. You and your family are walking south along the Euphrates River in search of good farmland and a new home. Loaded on the back of a donkey are a few possessions: farming tools, clay pots, and 2 baskets of barley, a kind of grain that the family hopes they'll soon be able to plant. Suddenly, you notice several patches of green and what looks like a small city. You run ahead and reach a small field. Tender green shoots of barley are just starting to sprout out of the soil. Here it is, the area where you will plant your barley. You hope that it grows well enough to make a surplus. Cause and effect. As you read, think of how the climate of the Fertile Crescent made it a good area for civilizations to rise. Where civilization began. As you learned in Chapter 1, people have been living and working together since prehistory. But it was not until about 3500 BC that one of the first civilizations began to develop. Civilizations are groups of people who have a complex and organized society within a culture. Each has its own customs, food supply, social divisions, government, religion, and technology. Civilizations first developed in southwestern Asia, in a crescent-shaped area. Look at the map below. This region stretched from the eastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, to the mouth of the Persian Gulf. Because of the region's fertile or rich soil and its curved shape, we call it the Fertile Crescent. Today, the land of the Fertile Crescent is part of the countries of Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. Some scholars include part of Egypt in northeastern Africa in the Fertile Crescent. Other scholars do not. Near the Mediterranean Sea were forests of cedar, oak, and pine. These trees provided a habitat for deer, sheep, and goats. A wild variety of barley also grew here. Farther south, the land of the Fertile Crescent consisted of grasslands, where wild pigs, oxen, and lions lived. The Zagros Mountains rose on the eastern part of the region. To the west lay deserts. In the central area was a plain, or area of flat land, bordered by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The area between the 2 rivers became known as Mesopotamia, or the land between the rivers. It was in Mesopotamia that one of the first civilizations emerged or rose up. Review. When did one of the first civilizations begin to develop? Sequence. Climate and rivers. The climate of the area is far from ideal for farming. Summers are long, hot, and dry, with temperatures reaching nearly 120 degrees Fahrenheit. In many areas, not a drop of rain falls from May to October. When rain falls from November to April, it varies from a brief sprinkle to a huge downpour. Heavy rains cause the riverbanks to overflow and flood the plain. In many parts of the Fertile Crescent, there is not enough rain for crops to grow. The early people of southern Mesopotamia needed to find a solution. Beginning about 5000 BC, farmers from the northern part of the Fertile Crescent probably began moving south in search of more fertile land. They moved from a plateau or area of high, flat land to the plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The rivers provided a permanent source of fresh water, which was essential for human settlement. The rivers also were full of fish that could be eaten. The soil was very rich for growing crops because the rivers overflowed their banks on a regular basis. Before they could start farming, the people needed to solve the problem of low rainfall. The rivers provided a solution. Farmers built trenches and ditches that brought the water from rivers to their fields. Such methods as these for watering crops are known as irrigation systems. Irrigation helped the people to control when and how much they watered their crops. Review. What problem did people have to solve before they could start farming in southern Mesopotamia? Sequence. The people. The people of southern Mesopotamia were problem solvers. They had to be, as the only real natural resources they had were water and soil. If lack of rain was not going to keep them from farming, then the fact that trees and stone were scarce was not going to keep them from building. From the marshy areas near the rivers, they cut reeds and built huts. Later, they began making bricks by mixing mud with straw. They then dried these mud bricks in the sun, which made them very sturdy for building. People used these bricks to build homes, temples, and palaces. For some time, most people worked as farmers or herders of domesticated goats, cattle, and sheep. Farmers planted crops such as barley, millet, wheat, dates, lentils, onions, garlic, turnips, lettuce, cucumbers, and apples. They made better tools for farming. Soon, the Mesopotamians were transporting food and goods on the rivers. Over time, the Mesopotamians developed their farming techniques to a very high level, as described in this farming handbook. Keep your eye on the man who puts in the barley seed. Let him drop the grain uniformly in the same way, 2 fingers deep. If the barley seed does not sink in properly, change your share, plow. Such careful attention resulted in surpluses of food crops. The production of surplus food was a major step toward the rise of civilization in southern Mesopotamia. Review. What kind of building materials did Mesopotamians use before they began using mud bricks? Sequence. Map adventure. You're a Mesopotamian trader. A messenger from the metalsmith's workshop in tells you that his boss is running low on copper. He needs a new supply as soon as possible. 1. Look at the map. Locate the sources of copper that seem nearest to 2. If your boss gives you a donkey, which is the best land route you can take? 3. If your boss gives you a boat and a donkey, which is the best route you can take? 4. Would your journey take longer going to or returning from the copper sources? Keep in mind that the river runs from north to south. Growth of city-states and trade. Once farming techniques had been improved in southern Mesopotamia, families thrived and the population grew. New settlers soon arrived from the northwestern and western parts of the Fertile Crescent. By 3500 BC, several villages, including Uruk, Kish, Lagash, Nippur, Umma, and had grown into city-states. A city-state is a city that is an individual unit, complete with its own form of government and traditions. Mesopotamia is a region, or an area on Earth with common physical features. No one single power controlled all the city-states. Because there was plenty of surplus food, it was no longer necessary for all of the people to work as farmers and herders. Some people helped govern the city. Others were religious leaders or soldiers. Some were artisans or craftspeople, such as potters and weavers. In exchange for the services they provided, these workers were paid in food. Some people also became traders. Traders packed up donkeys with goods, like barley and woven cloth. They then set out on long trading journeys. They returned with copper, stone, wood, and other raw materials that Mesopotamia lacked. Traders also used reed boats to trade with other Mesopotamian city-states along the river. The nearby Persian Gulf, however, was the real gateway to the wider world. For these journeys, the Mesopotamians built large wooden ships. They traded with faraway places. Through trade, the Mesopotamians met other peoples. This contact made their culture richer. It also helped them to spread Mesopotamian culture to other parts of the world. Review. After some villages grew into city-states, what new kinds of jobs developed? Sequence. Summarize the lesson. 7000 BC. Farmers arrived in the Fertile Crescent. 3500 BC. One of the first civilizations emerged in the Fertile Crescent. 3500 BC. The city-states of Mesopotamia rose.